Chapter 24. Take back your motherland, people. At first, I found my dialogue with Anastasia about what constitutes the motherland rather unintelligible. Her arguments didn't even seem normal to me, at least initially, but later, even today, I can't help thinking of them. I distinctly recall her response to my questions about what to do to prevent war, either earthly or interplanetary, from happening to us, to eliminate bandits altogether and bear happy and healthy children. It went this way. We need to tell everyone, Vladimir. Take back your motherland, people. Take back your motherland. Are you sure you're not mistaken, Anastasia? Everyone has a motherland, or a native land, only not everybody lives in the country where they were born. Maybe you didn't mean take back your motherland, but you need to come back to your motherland. Is that what you were trying to say? I was not mistaken, Vladimir. Most people living on this planet today have no motherland at all. What do you mean they haven't a motherland? For Russians, Russia is their motherland. The English have England. After all, everybody was born somewhere, and so people will use the term motherland or native land to refer to the land where they were born. Do you consider that one's must be measured by someone's arbitrarily determined? What else? That's the way things are. All states have borders. But if there were no borders, how could you determine your motherland then? By the place I was born, or maybe the whole earth would then be a motherland for everyone. The whole earth could be a motherland for each one of its inhabitants, and man could be caressed by everything in the universe. But for that to happen, he would need to join together all planes of being into a single point, call it his motherland, and create with his own self a space of love therein. Then all the best things of the universe would come into contact with it firsthand, come into contact with the space of your motherland. You in yourself will feel the whole vast universe through this point and possess power unsurpassed. They will know about this on other worlds. Everything will serve you as God or Creator wanted it. You've really got to speak in simpler terms, Anastasia. I didn't get anything about those planes of being, or how to join together their strands, or about the point I can call my motherland. Then we need to begin our discussion with what constitutes birth. Well, okay, with birth then. Only don't just say words, but use words that make sense for us on the earth today. Tell me, for example, how you picture the generation of the family, the birth and raising of children, in today's prevailing conditions, and how all the children of man can be born happy. Can you construct a plan or draw me a picture? I can. Then tell me about it. Only not about life in the forest or about the incomprehensible science of imagery. Nobody knows anything about that. Only you. I couldn't finish the sentence. My head was buzzing with not just one but a whole lot of questions. Especially, why was I even interested in knowing what this Tega recluse would tell me about our lives? How does she happen to know not only the outward details of our lives, but many people's inner feelings too? What were the possibilities of this incomprehensible science of imagery? I couldn't stay seated. I got up and began to pace to and fro, trying to calm down and to make sense of, to understand this incredible phenomena. I began to reason like this. Here's this young woman calmly sitting under a cedar tree, ruffling her hands slowly through the grass, or watching some bug crawl up her arm, or immersing herself briefly in thought. Here she sits in the taiga, far removed from the bustling day-to-day life of cities and nations, far removed from wars and all the troubles of the civilized world. But what if she actually knows this science of imagery to perfection? What if she can use it to influence people and society, and in a more powerful way than all our governments, parliaments, and religious denominations? Incredible. A fantasy. But there are actual concrete facts that confirm this. Incredible facts indeed. But they really do exist. In a very short time, she taught me to write books. She needed only 3 days to do this. She was the one pouring forth over and over again an unending stream of information. Incredible but fact. Without so much as an advertising campaign, her books have easily spread across municipal and national boundaries. Her image is in these books. By some unknown means, the image influences people and arouses creative impulses in them. Thousands of lines of poetry and hundreds of bards' songs are dedicated to her image. And this is something she has known about all along. Right there in the first book, I outlined what she said on this subject. Back then, there was nothing as yet. At the time, her words seemed like incredible nonsense, like a fantasy. But everything came about exactly as she had said. And now, even as I am writing these lines, incredible things have been happening. In 1999, the Prof Press publishing house put out a 500-page anthology of readers' letters and poems. The anthology was published in July, considered a dead season for booksellers, but an incredible thing happened. The whole print run of 15,000 copies sold out within a single month. Another 15,000 copies have been printed, but these books instantly sold out too. Such an event may not be so spectacular for a sensationalism-ridden press. In fact, it goes far beyond the conceptual bounds of sensationalism by virtue of the uniqueness of the conclusions stemming from it. Conclusions that defy credulity. It is indeed hard to believe that Anastasia's image is actually changing the consciousness of society. Readers feel the need of taking action. People both in Russia and abroad are independently organising readers' clubs and centres, calling them after her. Novosibirsk Medical Factory is producing the cedar oil she talked about. And in a small village in the Novosibirsk region, local residents are repairing their old equipment and endeavouring to produce healing oil according to the technology she recommended, and they are getting help from the city. It was she herself who said that Siberian villages would be regenerated and that children would start coming back to their parents. It was she herself who said that Siberian villages would be regenerated and that children would start coming back to their parents. She has been redirecting the flood of pilgrims from foreign temples to our native sacred sites. In the past 2 years alone, the dolmens she spoke about on the outskirts of Gelendzhik have been visited by over 50,000 of her readers. Around these previously neglected sacred sites, people are now planting flowers and gardens. And in a number of cities, they are planting cedars and other growing things according to her method. By decree of the head of the Tomsk Region Administration, an enterprise has been set up under the name of Sibirsky Dekorsy Siberian Flora, in English. It has now sent 4,000 cedar saplings to Moscow. Scientists are talking about Anastasia. Her image as a living, self-sufficient substance is already soaring across Russia. But only Russia? Women in Kazakhstan are collecting money to make a film about Anastasia. Wow. Here are Kazakh women wanting to make a film about a Siberian recluse. The image of hers is beginning to lead. Folded the pages. People somewhere. But where? By what power? Who is helping her? Is it possible she herself possesses some kind of incredible power, hitherto unknown? But why is she staying in her glade as before, still messing about with bugs, while intellectuals are arguing over whether or not she exists at all? She is simply taking action. The results of her actions can be seen, touched and tasted. What is this science of imagery? Back in the Taiga, I found such thoughts a trifle confusing. I wanted to have them either disproved or confirmed on the spot, but she was the only one around, the only one I could ask. So, I'm going to ask her. She is incapable of lying. I'm going to ask her. Tell me, Anastasia, tell me, do you have a perfect knowledge of the science of imagery? Do you possess the knowledge of those ancient priests? I was greatly excited as I awaited her reply, but a calm voice responded without the least hint of excitement. I know what my forefather taught those priests, and also what the priests did not give him the opportunity to say, and I have endeavoured to find out and feel new things on my own. Now I get it, just as I thought. You are more of an expert than anyone else on the science of imagery, and you have created your own image and placed it before people. For many you are a goddess, a messiah, a forest sprite. That is how readers write about you in their letters. You have told me I should write down everything, as though pride and self-conceit were a great sin, and I have presented myself before the public as a bumbler, while you have come out exalted over everyone. And what's more, you knew it was going to turn out this way in advance. Vladimir, I have not concealed anything from you. Anastasia rose from the ground and stood in front of me. Her arms down by her sides, she looked me straight in the eye and went on. Only my image is not yet clear to everyone, and that other image, which will be out there before the people, will also be mine. My image will resemble that of a cleaning lady who is simply dusting the cobwebs off the most important thing. What's this about cobwebs? Speak more clearly, Anastasia. What is it you want to create this time? I want to animate, bring alive the image of God to people. I want to make his grand dream clear to everyone, so that every living person may feel his aspiration of love. Man can become happy here and now in this life. The children of people on the earth today will live in his paradise. I am not alone. You are not alone. And paradise will appear as a conjoint co-creation. Hold on there. I realise now that your words will cause many teachings to fall apart. Their instigators and their followers will start not only lambasting you, but bombarding me too. Who needs problems like that? I refuse to write down everything you say about God. Vladimir, here you are afraid, just of the thought of struggling with someone you don't know. No, it's all quite clear to me. I'll get descended upon by all the religious leaders. They'll poison their fanatical followers against me. It is not them you are afraid of yourself, Vladimir. You are ashamed to present yourself before God. You do not believe in your new way of life. You think you cannot change. What's this got to do with me? I'm telling you about the clerics. So many of them are already reacting to your sayings. And what are they saying to you? Anastasia inquired. Different things. Some react negatively, while others just the opposite. One Orthodox priest from Ukraine came with me along with his parishioners in support of your sayings, but he's just a country priest. And what do you mean when you say a country priest came to see you? I mean, there are others, higher ups. Everybody's subject to them. Everything depends on them. But still, even those higher ups, as you call them, also once served in the smaller churches. That makes no difference. All the same, I'm not going to write until at least somebody is in charge of some major temple. Anyway, what am I saying? You can predict everything that's going to happen ahead of time. So tell me, who will be against you and who will help you? Will there be anyone, in fact, who comes to your assistance? What clerical rank would convince you to be bolder, Vladimir? Nothing less than a father superior or a bishop. Can you name any? She thought for a split second, as though gazing into both time and space at once, and then came this incredible answer. Assistance has already come, Vladimir, from someone who has uttered new statements about God, namely Pope John Paul II, Anastasia replied. The images of Christ and Mohammed will unite their energies in space, and other images will emerge together with them. There will also be an Orthodox patriarch, whose words will be revered for centuries. But most importantly, there will be impulses of inspiration among all ordinary people. It may be their earthly status that is important to you. But after all, truth is more important than anything on earth in it. At this point, Anastasia ceased talking and lowered her eyes, as though she had been suddenly offended by something. It appeared as though a lump in her throat had welled up, but she swallowed it and sighed. Then she added, "Forgive me. I fear I am not making myself clear to your heart. Things are not working out at the moment on my part, but I shall try to be clearer. Only let the people hear. About what? About what others have tried for 1,000 years to hide from them. About how it takes hardly a moment for any one of them to enter the Creator's pristine garden and there bring about splendid conjoint creations with him." I could feel a sense of agitation building inside her, and I myself, for some reason, began feeling agitated, and said, "Don't be concerned, tell me, Anastasia, and perhaps I shall be able to understand and write about it." And what she went on to say, she said in an extremely concrete and simple way. It was only later, after analysing and pondering her words, that I began to understand, and could feel some sense, a significant sense at that, in her words. "Take back your motherland, people." But back there in the forest, I asked her once more, "I see how it's all going to come about. I see that if you can so easily bring about images of life of thousands of years ago, that means you must know all religious teachings and treatises, and that you will reveal them to people." "I know the teachings that called forth reverence among people." "All of them?" "Yes, all of them." "And the Vedic scriptures you can translate in their entirety?" "I can. Only why waste time on that?" "But look, don't you want mankind to know about those ancient teachings? Tell me about them, and I shall write about them in my next book." "And then what? What do you think will be the net benefit to mankind?" "What do you mean? They'll become wiser." "Vladimir, the whole nature of the dark forces' trap is that with their multitude of teachings they try to conceal the most important thing from man. By presenting a portion of truth only for the mind in their treatises, they deliberately lead people away from the most important thing." "Then why do people call the ones that present such teachings wise men?" "Vladimir, if you will allow me, I shall tell you a parable. It is a parable that 1,000 years ago was whispered by wise men to each other in some secluded spot. For many centuries now, no one has heard this parable." "Then go ahead and tell it to me, if you think that the parable may be helpful in explaining something." End of chapter 24. Chapter 25. Two Brothers, a Parable. Once upon a time lived a couple that had for many years had no children. When they were well on in age, the wife bore twin boys, two brothers. The labour was difficult, and shortly after childbirth their mother passed on to the next world. Their father hired wet nurses and tried to bring up his children as best he could, and he managed indeed for nigh on 14 years. But as his boys approached their 15th birthday, the father himself passed on. After burying their father, the two brothers sat mourning in their room, two twin brothers. 3 minutes separated their emergings into the world, and so between the two of them one was considered the elder, his brother the younger. After a period of mournful silence, the elder brother spoke. "Our father on his deathbed told us of his sorrow that he had not been able to impart to us the wisdom of life. How shall you and I live without wisdom, my dear younger brother? Without wisdom our family line will go on in misery. People who have managed to gain wisdom from their fathers might laugh at us." "Do not be sad," said the younger to his elder brother. "You spend a good deal of time in reverie. Perchance time will afford you the opportunity in your reverie to learn wisdom too. I shall do everything you say. I myself can live without reverie. Yet I still find living a pleasing experience. I am happy when the day dawns and when it draws to a close. I shall simply live, take care of the household, while you are learning wisdom." "Agreed," replied the elder to the younger. "Only there is no opportunity to seek out wisdom by staying here at home. There is no wisdom here. No one has left it here, and no one will bring it to us on their own accord." But I, the elder brother, have decided I must, for both our sakes, and for the sake of our line, which will extend through time, find everything that is wise in this world. I must find it and bring it home, and bestow it upon our descendants as well as on as our own selves. I shall take with me everything of value our father left us, and travel throughout the world and meet all the wise people of different lands. I shall learn all their teachings and then return to my native home. Of course, your course will be a long one, said the younger brother sympathetically. We have a horse. Take the horse and the cart as well. And on your departure, take along as much goods as you can carry, so that you will find your journey the less hard. I shall stay at home and await your returning as the wisest of men. The brothers parted for a very long time. Years went by. The elder brother went from wise man to wise man, from temple to temple, learning the teachings of the Orient and the Occident, journeying to the north and to the south. He possessed a colossal memory, and his keen intellect quickly grasped everything he heard and committed it to heart. For about 60 years the elder brother plied the highways and byways of the world. His hair and beard turned to ashen grey. His inquisitive mind kept roaming and honing his wisdom, and his aging pilgrim came to be considered himself the wisest of men. He was followed around by a crowd of disciples. To inquisitive minds he generously preached his wisdom. Both young and old hung on to his every word, and his glory and fame preceded him wherever he came, and communities would proclaim in advance the wise man's great coming. And so it was in an aura of glory, surrounded by a throng of obsequious disciples, that the aging wise man drew nearer and nearer to the village where he was born and the house which he had left 60 years before as a youth of 15. All the people of the village turned out to greet him, and the younger brother showed similar signs of grey. Ran toward him rejoicing and bowed his head before his learned brother, and he whispered with gladsome tenderness, "Bless me, O my learned brother. Come into our home. I shall wash your feet after your long journey. Come into our home, my wise brother, and take your rest." With a magnanimous sweep of his hand, he gestured to all his disciples to remain on the little hill in front of the village, accept gifts from the well-wishers, and engage in learned conversations, while he himself entered the home of his younger brother. The wise man, like an aging dignitary, sat down wearily at the table in the spacious upper room, and the younger brother began washing his feet with warm water and listening to what his learned brother had to say. And the wise man began speaking to him as follows: "I have fulfilled my duty. I have learnt the teachings of the great wise men of the earth, and I have created teachings of my own. I shall not stay long at home now to impart what I have learnt to others. This is my part. But since I promised to bring my wisdom home, I shall fulfill my promise and sojourn a day or two with you. During this extent of time, my dear younger brother, I shall impart to you the wisest pearls of truth in the world. Here is the first. All people should live in a splendid garden." Drying his elder brother's feet with a beautifully embroidered towel, the younger went to considerable effort to please him, saying, "Go to, my brother. On the table before you are the fruits of our garden. I have gathered the very best for you." The wise man thoughtfully tasted the marvellous array of fruits before him and went on. "Every man living on the earth should cultivate his own family tree. When he dies, the tree will remain as a good memorial for his descendants. It will purify the air with its leaves, so that his descendants will be better able to breathe. We should all be able to breathe in good air. The younger brother began to show signs of haste and effort and said, "Forgive me, my wise brother, I forgot to open the window so that you can breathe fresh air." Whereupon he threw the window open and then went on, "Hey, here, breathe the air of our 2 cedar trees. I planted them the year you left. I dug a hole with my spade for one of the saplings. For the other I used the spade you played with when we were youngsters." The wise men thoughtfully gazed at the trees and then intoned, "Love is a grand feeling. Not everyone is handed the opportunity to live his life with love. And there is a grand wisdom. And each of us should strive every day for love." "Oh, how wise you are, my dear elder brother," exclaimed the younger. "You have learnt such great wisdom, and I am embarrassed in your presence. Forgive me, I have not even introduced you to my wife." And he called out toward the doorway, "Starushka, where are you, my little cookie?" "Here I am," a voice piped up, and in the doorway a cheerful old woman appeared with a plate of fresh steaming pies in her hands. "Sorry, I've been busy making pies." Putting the pies down on the table, the cheerful Starushka did a playful curtsy to the 2 brothers, and then she went over to the younger brother, her husband, and whispered in his ear, but loudly enough for the elder brother to hear, "And now you must forgive me, hubby. I have to go lie down." "How now, my ne'er-do-well?" her husband replied. "You've decided to go have a nap when we have an honoured guest, my very own brother, and you go—" "It's not that. My head is spinning and I'm starting to feel a bit nauseous." "But how could that possibly happen to you, my little busybody?" "Perhaps you are the one to blame, no doubt again. I am once more with child," laughed the Starushka as she ran off. "My apologies, brother," the younger brother excused himself in embarrassment. "She doesn't know the value of wisdom. She's always been light-hearted and is still that way even in her old age." The wise man's thoughtful moments became increasingly longer. His reverie was broken by the sound of children's voices. The wise man heard them and said, "Every man should strive to learn great wisdom, to learn how to raise children that will be happy and righteous." "Tell me, learned brother, I long to make my children and grandchildren happy. You see, my noisy little grandchildren have just come in." 2 boys, no older than 6, and a little girl of about 4 were standing in the doorway and quarrelling amongst themselves. In an attempt to smooth things out, the grey-haired younger brother hastened to say to them, "Quickly, tell me what all the fuss is about, my noisy ones. You're interfering with our conversation." "Oh!" the smaller boy exclaimed, "It seems our one grandpa has become 2. Well then now, which is ours and which is not? How do we tell?" "Here's our grandpakin sitting right here. Isn't it clear?" piped up the little girl, running over to the younger brother, putting her cheek against his leg, tussling his beard, and prattling, "Grandpakins, grandpakins, I was coming to see you all by myself to show you how I'd learnt to dance, and the boys decided to tag along all on their own. One of them wants to draw with you. See, he's brought a board and some chalk. The other one's brought a flute and a pipe, and he wants you to play them for him. But grandpakins, I was the one who decided to come and see you first. You tell the others that. You can send them home, grandpakins." "She's wrong. I came first to draw with you, and my brother only then decided he wanted to come with me to play the flute," observed the boy carrying the thin piece of board. "There are 2 of you, grandpakins. You decide," the granddaughter chimed in. "Which of us came first? You'd better decide that I was first, or else I'm going to feel terribly hurt and cry." The wise man, smiling sadly at the youngsters, he furrowed his brow, working out a response in his mind. But said nothing. The younger brother became flustered and decided to cut short the ensuing pause. He took the flute out of his grandson's hands and said without stopping to think, "We don't have any cause for quarrel here. Dance, my pretty little jumper, and I shall accompany your dance on the flute. My dear little musician will accompany me on the pipe, and you, my dear little artist, draw what the sounds of the music are drawing, and draw the ballerina doing her dance. And now everybody to the tasks. Look to it, lads." Whereupon the younger brother struck up a cheerful and splendid melody on the flute, and the grandchildren enthusiastically imitated him in time, portraying their favourite images. The future famous musician playing the pipe tried his best to keep up with the melody. The blushing girl leapt about like a ballerina in a delightful portrayal of her dance. The future artist drew a picture full of joy. The wise man kept silent. The wise man realized. When the merriment was finished, he rose and said solemnly, "You remember, my dear younger brother, our father's old hammer and chisel? Give them to me, and I shall hew out on a rock the most important lesson of all. Then I shall go away. I probably shan't come back. Don't stop me, and don't wait for me." The elder brother left. The aging wise man went with his disciples over to a great rock, which a pathway bent around. The same pathway that lured wisdom-seeking pilgrims into lands far from home. A whole day passed, and night fell, but the grey-haired wise man kept hammering and chiselling away at the inscription on the rock. When the aged man finished his work in exhaustion, his disciples read the inscription on the rock. "Whatever you seek, pilgrim, you are already carrying with you. You keep losing it with every step you take, and are finding nothing anew." Upon finishing the parable, Anastasia fell silent. She gave me an inquiring look in the eye, no doubt wondering what I had got from it. "Well, Anastasia, I took from the parable that all the pearls of wisdom the elder brother talked about, the younger brother was already implementing in his day-to-day life. There's just one thing that isn't clear to me, though. Who taught the younger brother all these wise things? No one. All the wisdom of the universe is included forever in each soul, right from the moment it is created. It is just that wise men slyly intellectualize for their own interests, and thereby leading people away from the most important thing. From the most important thing? But what is the most important thing? End of chapter 25. Chapter 26. Even today, everyone can build a home. The most important thing, Vladimir, is that even today, everyone can build a home. Everyone can feel God with their soul and live in paradise. One single moment is all that separates paradise from people living on earth today. Each one possesses conscious awareness within. When dogmas do not interfere with this awareness, then look, Vladimir, what has come to pass. All at once Anastasia brightened. She grasped hold of my hand and led me to the shore of the lake, where there was a patch of bare sand, and started talking to me along the way. "It only takes a moment. You will understand everything in just a moment of time, and everyone will understand, the readers, yours and mine. Within themselves, they will define the essence of the earth and become aware of their destined purpose. Right this moment, Vladimir, see? Right this moment, we shall, in our thoughts, build our home. I and you, and all of them too. And I assure you indeed that the thought of each one of them will be brought into contact with the thought of God. The gates of paradise will open. Let us go. Let us move with more speed. I shall draw it with a stick upon the shore. We shall build a home together with those who into contact with your written words will later come. All human thought will merge together into one. Believe me, people have God's ability within them to turn what they conceive into reality. And many a home will stand upon the land. And each one in their own homes will be able to grasp everything firsthand. They will be able to feel and understand the aspiration of the divine dream. We shall build a home, I and you and all of them too. Hold on there, Anastasia. There are a whole bunch of different designs out there for homes where people are living now. What sense can there be in proposing yet another one? Vladimir, you must do more than simply listen to me. You must feel everything that I outline. and mentally complete yourself the whole design and let everyone else draw it along with me. Oh God, people, at least give it a try, I beg of you. Anastasia was literally trembling with joyful excitement. She was reaching out to people, and I found myself growing more and more interested in her design. And at first it seemed simple to me, yet at the same time I had the feeling as though this recluse, Anastasia, was revealing to everyone a most extraordinary secret. The whole secret was in utter simplicity, and if I can remember the events in order, this is how they all went. Anastasia continued. First, choose for yourself a place of your own you like best of all the pleasing... I'll say that again. First, choose for yourself a place of your own you like best of all the pleasing spaces on the earth. A place where you would like to live and would like your children to live out their lives. And then you will indeed leave to your great-grandchildren a fitting memorial to you. The climate, too, in that place must be favourable for you. Take 1 hectare of land in that place for yourself in perpetuity. But nobody can just come along and take a piece of land they jolly well desire. Land today is sold only in places where people wish to sell it. Yes, unfortunately, everything happens that way today. Our motherland is extensive, but there is not a single hectare of your land where you can create a corner of paradise for your children and descendants, and yet the time has now come when we must begin acting on this cause and take advantage of the most favourable of all the existing laws. I don't know all the laws, of course, but I'm sure there is no law allowing someone to take possession of a parcel of land in perpetuity. Farmers can rent a good deal of land, but only for 99 years. Well then, we can start by making it for a shorter span of time, but we need at once to plan a law so that everyone may have his own parcel of ground, his own motherland. Whether or not to what degree the country flourishes as a state depends on this. And if there is no appropriate law at the moment, well, you will have to make one. That's easier said than done. Our laws are made by the State Duma. It has to make some amendment or introduce a new article into the Constitution, and the parties in the Duma are constantly fighting with each other. There's no way they can settle the land question. Then, if there's no party capable of enshrining into law everyone's right to their motherland, you will have to form such a party. And who will set it up? Those who will read about the home we are creating and become aware of what a motherland means to each one, to each man living today, and to the future of the whole earth. Well, enough about political parties. Tell me rather about this unusual home of yours. I'm really interested now in what new design you can possibly bring forth. Let's say someone has come into possession of a hectare of land. Not exactly a paradise, but say one overgrown with wild grasses. They're probably not going to give him better than that. And there he is, standing on his hectare of land. What next? Think about it yourself, Vladimir, and dream a little too. What could you do if you were standing on your own land? End of that chapter 26. Chapter 27. Ascents. First of all, I said, everything, of course, must be enclosed by a fence. Otherwise, when they start bringing in building materials to construct the manor house, somebody could come along and pilfer them. And when you plant a crop, it might be stolen before you harvest it. Or are you against fences on principle? I'm not against them, Vladimir. Even animals mark out their own territory. Only, what are you going to make the fence of? What do you mean, what of? Fence boards, of course. No, wait, fence boards can turn out to be on the expensive side. For starters, you need to dig post holes and string up barbed wire all around the property. Even then, you should still put up boards so people wouldn't see inside the fence. And how many years could a board fence last without needing repair? If it is constructed of good material, if you keep it painted or varnished, and smear the parts of the posts that are in the ground with pitch, it might go 5 years or more without needing repair. And then you probably need to do some repair work and touch it up to keep it from rotting. So that means you will constantly have to fuss over the fence, and it will give your children and grandchildren even greater cause for concern. Would it not be better to construct it so your children will not have to bother about it, so that their view will not be spoilt by the sight of rotting timber? Let us think how to make the fence more solid and long-lasting, so that your descendants may have fonder remembrances of you. Of course, you can build it so it will last longer. Who wouldn't want that? For example, you could make brick pillars and a brick foundation, put in cast iron grill work in between. That kind of fence doesn't rust. It can even last 100 years, but only very rich people can afford to build a fence like that. Can you imagine a whole hectare? That's a perimeter of 400 metres. A fence like that's going to set you back several 100,000 rubles, maybe even millions. Still, it'll last a good 100 years, maybe 200 or more. You can even have it made with all sorts of family monograms. Your descendants will look at it and remember their great-grandfather, and it'll be the envy of everyone around. Envy is not a good feeling, Vladimir. In fact, it is harmful. Well, there's not that much you can do about that. I tell you, enclosing a hectare of land with a good fence is not something many people can afford. That means we must think up some other kind of fence. What other kind? Can you suggest something? Would it not be better, Vladimir, in place of a whole lot of posts which can later rot, to plant trees? Trees? And then what? Nail boards? Why nail boards to them? Look there in the forest there. There are a lot of trees growing with their trunks only 1 and 1.5 meters apart. Yes, you're right, but there are holes between them. It's not the same as a fence. But it is possible to plant bushes in between them that people cannot get through. Take a careful look and think what a splendid living fence you could have. And it would be just a little bit different with each person, and everyone would come to admire the view, and your descendants in the ages to come will remember the creator of this splendid hedge. And the hedge will not only save them on time and repairs, but will bring them benefits as well. It will serve, in fact, as far more than just a barrier. One person will make a hedge out of birches growing in a row, another will use oak, and someone with a creative impulse will make a coloured hedge, the kind one reads about in fairy tales. What do you mean, coloured? Planting different coloured trees, birches, maples, oaks and cedars. Someone may intertwine a rowan tree with clusters of bright red berries, and still plant guelder roses in between, and make room for bird cherry trees and lilac bushes. After all, you can plant it all out in advance. Each planter should watch to see how high each one grows, how it blooms in the spring, what kind of a fragrance it has, and what feathered friends it attracts. Thus your hedge will be both sonorous and pleasantly fragrant, and you will never get tired of looking at it, as the picture will be changing its tints with each passing day. It will flourish with colours anew every spring, and every autumn burst forth in an explosion of fiery hues. Well, Anastasia, it seems you're a poetess as well. We began with just a simple fence, and now see what all you've made of it. You know, I really like the way you've turned the whole thing around. And why haven't people thought of this before? No painting required, no repair, and when the trees get too big, they can be cut down and used for firewood, and people can plant new trees. They can change the picture, just like an artist. The only thing is, won't it take a long time to plant that kind of a hedge? If you're going to plant the trees 2 meters apart, and you've got to dig 200 holes for the saplings, and then plant the bushes in between, and no technology will be allowed, you say? Oh, on the contrary, Vladimir, there's no sense in rejecting technology for the project at hand. Indeed, any intervention of the dark forces must be put to use to serve the forces of light. It will hasten the implementation of the plan if you use a plough to dig a trench around the perimeter of the ground lot and plant the saplings in it, along with the seeds at the same time, for the bushes you have decided to plant between the trees. Then you can go over it again with the plough to fill in the soil. While the earth is still loose, you can adjust the position of each sapling to even out the row. That's fantastic. So in 2 or 3 days, one person can put in a whole hedge. Yes. The only drawback is that until the hedge grows, it won't deter any thieves, and people will have to wait a long time for it to grow, especially in the case of oak and cedar. But birch and aspen grow quickly, and the bushes between them will not take much time either. If you're in a hurry, you can plant tree saplings 2 meters high right away. When the birches are grown, they can be cut up for household use, and their places will be taken by the maturing cedars and oaks. Okay then, a living fence is something I can grasp. I really like it. Now tell me, what style of house do you see on the ground lot? Perhaps we should first plan out the lot as a whole, Vladimir. What do you have in mind? Different beds for tomatoes, potatoes, cucumbers? That's usually women's work. House building is a man's job. I think you need to build one large house right off. A fashionable manor house in the European style, so that your grandchildren and great-grandchildren will remember you fondly. Then there can be a smaller cottage for the servants. It's a pretty big lot after all. It'll require a lot of work. Vladimir, if everything is done properly from the start, there will be no need for servants. Everything around you will serve you with great pleasure and with love. And not only you, but your children and whole family and great-grandchildren too. It doesn't happen that way with anyone. Even with your beloved Dachniks. They only have 500 or 600 square meters, yet they're working it every free day from dawn till dusk. And here they're going to have a whole hectare. It's going to take at least a dozen dump trucks every year just to bring in the fertilizer and manure. First, the loads of manure have to be spread over the whole growing area, and then all the earth has to be dug up and turned over. Otherwise, nothing will grow right. And you'd better add some kind of fertilizer. You can get it in special stores. If you don't fertilize, the soil won't give a good yield. It's something agronomists, people who study agriculture, know, and Dachniks have learned from experience. I hope you agree on the need for fertilizer. Of course the earth needs fertilizing, but the task need not be devitalizing. God has thought through everything in advance so that the ground in the place you wish to live will turn out to have the right nutrients and be in an ideal condition without wearisome physical effort on your part. You need only make contact with His thought and feel the wholeness of the system He has designed, instead of just relying on your own intellect in making decisions. Then why is nothing fertilized today? Nowhere on the earth, according to God's system. Then why is nothing fertilized today anywhere on the earth according to God's system? And then there's some pictures of a living fence and some Kinsdomains plotted out, and a Kinsdomain settlement, and some little wooden houses, huts, and a gathering of people on their Kinsdomains, and a garden plots with loads of beautiful things growing, and a spread of lovely food, and people standing by a lake, and all people just gathering together for Dachnik Day on the 23rd of July. Vladimir, right now you're in the taiga. Look around you, how high the trees are, how mighty their trunks. Among the trees, herbs and bushes are growing. There are raspberries and currants. Indeed, a whole lot of everything grows right here in the taiga for man's use. And over thousands of years, not a single person has fertilized the ground, but the land remains fruitful. What do you think? How has it been fertilized, and by whom? By whom? I don't know how or by whom, but you've pointed out a really important fact. Indeed, it's simply amazing how man somehow gets everything twisted around. Tell me yourself, why aren't various kinds of fertilizers needed in the taiga? Here in the taiga, God's thought and God's plan are not interfered with to the same degree as where man lives today. In the taiga, leaves fall off the trees and little branches are torn off by the breeze. And these leaves and branches, along with worms, fertilize the ground in the taiga, and the grass which grows all around regulates the composition of the earth. The bushes help it clear away excesses of acids and alkalis. None of the fertilizers you are familiar with can substitute for leaves falling from the trees. After all, leaves include many of the diverse energies of the universe. They have seen the stars, the sun and the moon, and not only seen, but they have interacted with them. And even many thousands of years from now, the ground here in the taiga will still be fertile. But the ground lot where our house is to be built is not the taiga, you see. Then start planning. You yourself can plant a forest of different kinds of trees. Anastasia, maybe it'd be best if you told me right off how to make it so that the soil on the plot stays fertilized with all on its own. That is a major undertaking since there are so many other things to do. Planting beds, warding off various kinds of pests. Of course, we could talk about details and particulars, but it would be best for each one to apply his own thought, his soul and his dream to the building work. Each of us knows instinctively what will be the most suitable arrangement for him and bring joy to his children and great and grandchildren. There can be no one single plan that fits all. Each plan is individual, like a great artist's masterpiece. Each man must make it his own. But give me an example, at least tell me in general terms. All right, look, I shall do a little outlining for you. But first, there is the most important thing to understand. Everything is created by God's hand for the good of man. You are a man and can control everything around you. You are a man. Try to comprehend and feel through your soul what constitutes a real paradise on the earth. Now, more specifically, Anastasia, without philosophizing, tell me what to plant and where. Tell me where I should dig. What cash crop should I grow that will bring me the biggest return on my investment? Vladimir, don't you know why peasants and farmers today are so unhappy? Well, no, why? So many of them are striving to bring in as big a harvest as they can to sell. They think more about money than about the land. They themselves do not believe they can be happy in their own family nest. They think the rest of the people are happy in the big cities. Believe me, Vladimir, whatever is created in your soul will unfailingly be reflected in the whole world around you. Of course, outward details are also necessary. Let us think together about one way we can plan out our plot. I shall simply start things rolling and you help me on your part. Okay, I'll help. You start. Let us say our lot is on a barren section of land and is now enclosed on all sides by a hedge. Let us divide it, reserving half or 3/4 of the lot for a forest, and there plant a variety of trees. On the edge of the forest, where it borders on the remaining part of the lot, we shall plant a hedge in such a way that animals cannot pass through it and trample the crops growing in the garden plot. In the forest, we shall set up a pen using densely planted saplings, which in time will be a home to a goat or two, and we shall also use saplings to construct a shelter for egg-laying hens. In the garden plot, we shall make a pond approximately 16 meters across. We shall plant raspberry and currant bushes among the trees in the forest, and wild strawberries around the edge. Later, after the trees in the forest have grown a little, we can set up 2 or 3 empty log hives there for bees, and we shall use trees to make a gazebo where you will have a cool place, safe from the heat, to talk with your children or your friends. And you can make a summer sleeping area out of living things, along with a creative workshop for you, and sleeping places for the children, and a living room. Oh wow, it won't be a forest we'll end up with, but more of a palace. Only the palace will be a living entity and continue to grow in perpetuity. This is how the Creator himself thought up the whole balance of things, and all man has to do is to assign everything its task, according to his own taste, design, and understanding. But why didn't the Creator do it all this way to begin with? Everything in the forest grows just where it happens to end up. Think of the forest as a book for you as a creator. Look more closely, Vladimir. Everything therein has been written by the Father. Look over there. 3 trees are growing just a ½ meter apart. You are free to plant them in a row and use a whole lot of them to make up other configurations. In among the trees there are bushes growing. Think of how you can make use of them to sweeten your life. And where the trees do not allow grass and bushes to grow between them, you can take that as a lesson for building your future house out of living materials. It is as though all you have to do is to formulate the required program and adjust it according to your taste. Everything around you is charged with the task of cherishing and delighting you and your children, cherishing and feeding them. To feed ourselves, we'll need to plant a vegetable garden, but that'll take a lot of sweat. Believe me, Vladimir, even the vegetable garden can be set up so that it will not be an aggravation. You just need to keep everything under observation. Among the herbs, just the way everything grows in the forest, you could have the most splendid tomatoes and cucumbers under cultivation. Their taste will be much more appealing and healthful for the body, and when they are grown simply on a patch of than when they are grown simply on a patch of bare ground. But what about the weeds? And won't they be destroyed by pests and beetles? There is nothing useless in nature, Vladimir, and there are no purposeless weeds. Neither are there any beetles that are harmful to man. What do you mean there aren't any harmful beetles? Take locusts, for example, or the Colorado beetle, a real vermin that eats away at potato crops in the fields. Yes, it does. It is also thereby showing people how their ignorance is eating away at the self-sufficiency of the earth, contradicting the designs of the divine Creator. How can people keep stubbornly ploughing year after year in one and the same place, torturing the ground? It is like scraping an open wound, at the same time demanding benefits from the wound. Locusts, or the Colorado beetle, will not touch the ground lot which you and I have outlined. When everything grows together in one grand harmony, the fruits accruing to the owner are also harmonious. But if that's the way everything is going to ultimately turn out, maybe that on the lot you have thought up, there is no need for man to fertilise the ground or fight off vermin with various kinds of poisons or do weeding, and everything is just going to grow all by itself. Then what is there left for man to do? Live in paradise the way God wanted us to. Anyone who is able to build himself a paradise like that will come into contact with the divine thought and produce a new co-creation together with him. What new co-creation? Its turn will come once the creation of paradise has been completed in due course. Let us consider now what you and I still need to do. End of chapter 27.